Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavindam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Agana Tamirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, I was seeing where we are. The sage Pipalayana is noticing that Gopakumar has a desire to go see Lord Jagannath. So we're reading from the Sri Brihat Bhagavatamrita of Srila Sanatan GoswamiPad. And to catch us up on the story, we'll start that Gopakumar is telling his story. And this chapter is called Gyan, which means knowledge. He has now, after receiving the Gopal mantra in a dream from the goddess Uma, or the wife of Lord Shiva, who he was worshipping, desiring to give him the greatest gift that she had also received from Lord Shiva. So then she gives him this mantra and says, the greatest reward will come from continually chanting this mantra like this. So he doesn't know really where it's going to take him. So in one sense, this chapter Gyan is an awakening of consciousness through knowledge. And I was thinking how, in one sense, we pray that within this lifetime, there's a full awakening of knowledge. We pray that this lifetime will give us that wisdom to direct us to the proper destination, or to the highest destination. So he's gone now. He's gone through the earthly realms. He saw people worshiping the Lord in a general sense, and they were called karmakandis. They were worshiping the Lord to get material benefits. Then he progressed, and he saw renunciates worshiping the Lord, and in an impersonal way, with the desire to get moksha, or impersonal liberation. Then he progressed further, and he saw how the Lord was being worshipped with devotion, but not in a specific way. There are many forms that the Lord was being worshipped. So he continued on his journey, and in one sense we can see that this is like one spiritual growth. Sanatan Goswami is describing kind of like the theistic growth in all of mankind. You may worship God for fruit of result. You may then perceive God as being everywhere present. Then you may see him in a more personal way. But then it has to be directed to the highest. And of course, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's been implanted within our heart. What is the highest destination? But in the general journey of things, he moves onward to Jagannath Puri, and he becomes enamored by the worship of Krishna in the form of Lord Jagannath. In any case, his worship then takes him further to the heavenly realms where he sees Indra worshiping. He goes even higher to the Mahalok, and he sees great sages worshiping the Lord through Jagna, fire, and that the Lord would manifest in a personal form in the fire element. Then he goes up even higher to the highest planet here, TapoLoka, where we are now, and he sees great sages headed by the 4 Kumaras who are sitting in meditation. So he's observing how the Lord is worshipped in different ways in different realms, and what is the ultimate goal of their worship. So here he sees that they are all in meditation, but he also has a desire to see the personal form of the Lord. But everyone's there is seeing the Lord within their hearts. They're seeing a personal form, but the personal form is their meditation. But he's accustomed to seeing externally, so he wants to see the form of the Lord in an external manifestation. So he's kind of thinking to go back to Jagannath Puri, because there the Lord is worshipped in a very opulent way, and the form of Jagannath with Baladev and Subhadra is there. So he's thinking like this. So Pipalaya Narishi, one great sage, one of the 9 Yogendras who is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, topmost yogis, 9 Nava Yogendra, 9 Yogendras or yogis. Their teachings are given in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. So Pipalayana Rishi approaches Gopakumar. The sage Pipalayana noticed, I was eager to go back to Nilachala to see Lord Jagannath, who lives there always resplendent. The sage then spoke to me. Shri Pipalayana said, why do you want to leave this exalted place and go somewhere else? Why are you wandering around just to see the Lord with your eyes? You should concentrate your mind in meditation. Then you will naturally see the Lord everywhere, within and without, as if always before you in a person, or in personal form. So, of course, in each chapter, each section here, the particular person who represents the area, here is Pipalayana Rishi, discusses their philosophy of worship of the Lord. And here he's saying, why are you so eager to see the Lord? Once you witness him within the heart, you'll see him everywhere. I was thinking of the verse offered to the spiritual master, Om Agana Timirandasya Gyanan Janashalakaya Chakshrimilitam Jina Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Om Agana Timirandasya. So this says, I was born in the darkness of ignorance. The actual example is sometimes given like the cataracts over the eye, and with the utensil is removed. I have recent experience of that, but now I got clarity in one eye. The other one's going to be done at the end of this month. So, but the idea, or I'm born in darkness and with the torchlight, when you're in a dark area and you need a torchlight, or in India they call the flashlight a torch also, but anyway, you need some light, source of light. So the wisdom the spiritual master gives you is that torchlight of knowledge. But I was thinking also in context with this, there's another form of knowledge. Because the spiritual master can give us knowledge, which gives us the proper direction. But there is still the application of that knowledge, which will lead to realization of that knowledge. And realization of that knowledge means experiencing or realizing it in a tangible sense, like is called Vigyan, spiritual realization. Because otherwise it's maybe just a philosophy class, may go to Bhagavatam, it's like a philosophy class or something. But you're supposed to absorb that knowledge and then act upon that knowledge, and in accordance with that, you will grow spiritually. So we can see, as in the case with Gopakumar, he is also gaining experience, and life is meant for gaining experience. That knowledge is of Shastra and the wisdom of the spiritual master are like guiding lights, torch lights, guiding lights. Go this way, go that way. But we also have to apply ourselves to go in that direction, apply ourselves through our own sadhana and so forth, and allow that wisdom to mature into realization. So life is like that. We heard recently an American, I think it was an American Indian proverb or something that said, was like a blessing, and it said, may you have enough time in this life to experience the full potential of this life, or something to that effect. In other words, we want enough days in our life. That is a true blessing. Sometimes the spiritual master will say, may you have long life. But what does that long life mean? It means enough days within this life to experience the truth. Because that is our goal. That is what we've come to understand the purpose of this human form of life is. We need enough time to realize that, so that we can actually proceed to the highest goal. Otherwise, we may have to come back again and go through so many different lessons to learn like that. So in one sense, Sanatan Goswami is writing this almost in the context of how the jiva progresses in understanding. So now he's understood something as he's progressing through the earthly ways of worship and then to the heavenly ways of worship. And Kripalayana is discussing how they approach the Lord through their meditation. With nothing else going on in the mind, direct vision of Lord Hari with one's eyes takes place in the heart. When the mind is happy, all the senses are automatically happy. For the functions of the senses, speech, vision, hearing, and so on, are included within those of the mind. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, actually, that all suffering and all happiness really takes place in the mind. Because we may bring in different impressions with the senses, but our interpretation of that differs according to the modes of nature and so forth. Certain foods, like for us in the sattva guna, and of course as devotees of Krishna, we have a particular taste of foods we like because they're sattvic. They're sattvic. Others like a tamasic food, and they'll relish that. That's their happiness. You give them sattvic food, I don't like that. I don't like vegetables here. That's so much. So this is because they're actually not on the sattvic level. The devotee relishes vegetables cooked in so many wonderful ways and variety. So the idea is that happiness is there, but it's all within the mind. What we perceive as happiness, what we perceive as distress. So he's saying in the clarity of vision, when the mind becomes clean, and actually Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives us that direction, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The chanting of the Mahamantra is actually meant to clean the mirror of the mind. That's the expression, clean the mirror of the mind. Mirror means so that we can gain the reflection of the reality. So when the living being begins his path of Krishna consciousness, he begins with on the path of anartha nirvritti. He has to deal with unwanted baggage that he's carrying, things that weigh him down, some things that stop his progress. Sometimes we're even reading now. Gurupatni is reading that book. What is his name again? My Days with Prabhupada. So one of the first devotees, Umapati, is writing. He went away for a while. and went back to his old ways. That happens sometimes. And when he comes back, of course, Prabhupada is very happy, and he explains that the process of Christian consciousness is so powerful that really everyone will come back eventually. But he did go away because you have strings pulling on you, material desires and what is called a samskara, which is positive in the Vedic sense, where you do things which bring positive things to the mind. There are negative samskaras which hold us back, negative thoughts, negative emotions, and so forth. So here, Pipalayana says, if you can clear the mind, then naturally you will see the Lord. So what is the need to go somewhere else when you can see the Lord within your own heart? That is what we are all doing here in TapoLoka. So he says, without the function of the mind, the functions of the senses are useless, because it is the mind which interprets our impressions. For even if one acts, one's deeds will be as if never performed, because the self will be unable to perceive them. The mind is the media through which the self perceives, in other words, the soul. And it is the soul who is the actual seer. We are the witness within the body. We are the observer. There are some yogic types of meditation to separate themselves from this world by realizing I'm not the doer, I'm not the seer. Like, I'm not the one who's actually tasting. I'm not the one that is actually seeing. It's the perceiver. Because you can have senses, but if the perceiver is not there, then what is he? It's like these glasses don't see, but the eye see through the glasses. And similarly with the eyes don't see, but I perceive through the eyes, or I hear with the ears. And that is ultimately the soul, that is the conscious being. The jiva is the conscious being. So he goes, if the Lord out of compassion for his devotees sometimes reveals himself to their eyes, that vision actually occurs by the power of the mind. One only imagines the eyes to be the seers. That was an interesting thing that Guru Patni was reading in that book, because they were looking at a poster, him and his friend, after they had blooped out, and they were looking at a picture of Krishna, and they both kind of had this same vision, and it almost was like the poster became alive, whatever it was, whether it was from residual LSD trips or somehow or other Krishna manifested. But anyway, it was interpreted within the mind. But they observed the reality. They said, what Swamiji is telling us is true. Krishna is God. That was their realization. So they went back to the temple. So in the same way, it's saying here that actually our vision occurs within our mind, how we see something. And even if the Lord sometimes manifests externally, still we won't see the Lord unless we see him with our mind. In other words, many people go to the temple, they don't know what they're seeing, first of all, unless they're educated. And that education begins with, this is Krishna. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's standing there with his consort Radharani. He plays the flute, or wears a pika. Whatever it may be, we tell people for the first time coming to the temple. Then they begin to get a vision. This is what you're doing. This is what you. So it does take the mind to some degree to understand what you're seeing. You go to the temple, you don't know what you're seeing. Strange forms. You see Jagannath. That's really mystifying to people. They don't know what they're seeing, or maybe some voodoo doll. They don't know what it is until they're educated. So here, even by the power of his mercy, it is the mind that sees. That bliss later continues in the heart, even after the Lord is no longer visible to the eyes. In other words, we carry our experiences within our heart. We remember the joy of something we experienced. Like so many devotees recently telling us how much they remember Shiva Vrindavan Gardens and how joyful that was. It's something you're carrying in your heart, an experience. And so even if the Lord appears but then disappears, which happens sometimes when by the blessing of Krishna gains a vision of the Lord, and like Maharaj Pariksit in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord appeared and said, "You will no longer see me, but this will begin your search for me." In other words, you have to also put out your effort. It's not that I'm just going to be there. You have to search for me, but I gave you the inclination to take the step. So Krishna may do that to give us the inclination to take the step, but we have to move forward ourselves. Thus the worthy receiver of that bliss realizes that within his mind. He perceives that happiness that he knew or realized within his mind. As much as the mind becomes peaceful, to that extent pleasure grows. No external sense can feel such expanding pleasure. We know, even in the mundane sense, if the mind is not peaceful, you can have a nice meal before you or whatever it is, but not if you're feeling down or something. It doesn't change anything. People try to find happiness. We know in the negative sense they go to drugs and stuff because the mind is disturbed. But they don't find that happiness. So they're longing for happiness, but they're looking for happiness wrongly. So he's saying real happiness is therefore within the mind, and it's not to be found from any external source. It is said that seeing the Lord in person gives joy to his devotees. But that same form of the Lord causes fear and other hardened emotions for persons like Duryodhana and Kamsa. So you see that just seeing Krishna doesn't bring joy. Others can see Krishna who are demons. They don't feel joy. They feel fear or anger or envy. But for the devotees, they feel joy. So that emotion is also felt within the mind. So that's the point, that just seeing is not enough. Realization has to take place within the heart. Began. So that beautiful and all opulent form of Lord Narayan, the concentrated essence of supreme bliss, refines the functions of all the senses. Yet demons, even after seeing the Lord in person, do not lose their evil disposition. Is not enough to see. Demons have seen the Lord. He gives them his vision, but they don't change their mind about him by seeing. So there's what we're actually discussing is the cultivation of devotion within the heart. The devotee sees the Lord out of natural devotion. Demons don't have any devotion, so they can see the Lord, but it doesn't awaken any positive emotion within them. Of the 9 kinds of devotional service, smaranam, remembrance, is considered the chief. It is an offering of the activity of the mind, the most important of all the senses. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. We have to hear, we have to chant, and we have to remember. So remembering is the important thing. But the hearing about Krishna, the chanting, all the other 9 processes, worshiping the Lord, doing seva and all that, ultimately is meant to affect the mind so that we're constantly thinking. And that's why Prabhupada called this Krishna consciousness. It means becoming conscious of Krishna in everything you do. Mindful. But our consideration of mindfulness is remembrance of the Lord. Other people have different definitions for mindfulness. Mm-hmm. But our definition is Krishna consciousness. Real mindfulness is Krishna consciousness. Becoming Krishna conscious. That is true mindfulness. That our mind is always thinking about Krishna. Whatever we're doing. And that can become actually a very natural and pleasurable situation. We were discussing that with some of my god brothers and god sisters. That for when one is advanced in devotional service, whatever one's doing, he perceives it in relationship to Krishna. That's why advanced devotee is never to be judged, because his consciousness is different than the ordinary aspiring devotee or progressive devotee who's moving forward. The Kanishta cannot know actually the experience of the Madhyam, and the Madhyam actually can't know the experience of the Uttama. We can read about it, that the Uttama sees Krishna everywhere, the Madhyam worships the Lord and gives respect. We can see these things, but we don't know the experience until we've raised ourselves to that level. A Kanishta doesn't know what the Madhyam is experiencing, and the Madhyam doesn't know what the Uttama is experiencing. It's different experience or levels of Krishna consciousness. It's all Krishna consciousness, therefore Mahaprabhu gives a broad definition of who is a Vaishnava. He has asked anyone who chants the name of Krishna. Okay, that is broad definition. But to the extent one is Krishna conscious is then divided according to Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam. And on these different levels, one can't know exactly what the higher Vaishnava is experiencing or realizing. So from the higher, he can understand what is the levels of the lower. It's like standing on the top of the mountain. You can look down and see the layers there. But from the top, from the bottom, you can't really see the top. There's some idea, but not in detail. Only the mind fixed in meditation can unceasingly offer the Lord that offering which is the most confidential, loving devotional service that follows one's natural taste. Samadhitam, the word here is used, that fixed in meditation or samadhi, that jataruchi, the taste of one's devotion, cannot really be had until the heart is really purified. And the most confidential loving service that follows the natural condition of one's heart will only be seen when the mind is purified. There is one goal of all disciplines, one highest attainment for all, the one potent means to bring the Supreme Lord under one's control. Only by the mercy of the Lord can it be gained. It is rare, an exclusive treasure of his devotees, that the Lord is within our confine. I mean, we like an embrace, that the devotee embraces the Lord. A rich treasure with every sort of transcendental ecstasy and sweetness. Its wonderful glories are beyond the power to describe. That attainment is called prema. It arises from special transformation of the mind, a maturity, a spiritual maturity that takes place. We've been, actually all the senior Vaishnavas that are gathering together in our reading groups are appreciating the subtle aspects of everyone's realizations who have been performing devotional service so solidly for so many years now. And that it is a natural function of the soul to love and worship Krishna. And it arises in how deeper our understanding and meditations are all getting at this point by the mercy of our spiritual master, that we remain consistent and followed his instructions. And then the reward is there. The deeper natural realization begins to follow. It comes naturally. It's like a child who is eating properly. When the parents are feeding the child, he'll naturally have a good, strong body, and like that. If he's only eating, and this is, sometimes they put junk food and stuff, their development is stunted. So if we're taking the proper diet, which is Krishna consciousness, the proper medicine of chanting and proper diet of hearing and like that, then we'll grow properly. But growth also takes time, just like a child takes time. But it has to eat properly in the beginning, and it has to grow properly. And so also ourselves, as spiritual aspirants, we have to grow and nurture our devotion, like a plant or something like that. You know, you have to feed it, you have to give it care and attention. So what's most important is our own heart, we should understand, and that we need to cultivate our heart in devotion. And that takes proper steady chanting and so forth like that. So here Pipalayana is giving some good instruction. If you think that focusing the mind is too difficult and you are eager to see the personality of Godhead, to fulfill the purpose of your eyes, then you may go to Bharatvarsha, India. There you may find the Lord residing on Gandhamadana mountain as Narayan. It is said that the Lord is always seated in meditation in a place high up in the Himalayas. So he's saying you could go there. He is the source of our teachings, that we meditate upon Narayan and in our particular moods see him in different ways. So if you want to see him in physical form, you can go there. He's living there as a guru. He dresses as a brahmachari, his hair is matted, and he performs severe austerities as an instruction for the benefit of the world. Gopakumar, he says, observing that I was eager to go, the 4 brothers, headed by Sanaka, told me, just see, he is right here, and showed me many forms of the Lord. One brother assumed the form of Narayan, another that of Vishnu, another of the Lord of Sacrifice, and last assumed several different forms. They have the power in their yogic meditation and their absorption to actually see the Lord within, but also their body becomes transformed as a intense ecstasy into a form like the Lord, like that. And so why are you needing to go somewhere else? You want to see the form? We can manifest the form externally also through the deepness of our meditation, like that. So, trembling in fear, I joined my palms, bowed down, and said, I have surely offended you. I'm thinking to go somewhere else, but here I have everything. Well, I surely have offended you. Oh, kind friends, friend of the fallen, please forgive me. They touched my head, and thus I attained a meditative trance, in which I also directly saw those various forms of the Lord. And even after I got up from meditating, by the momentum of my trance, I would behold, as if nearby, the forms of God. Then my japa improved in quality. I became more and more joyful as I chanted, but my mind still remained agitated by thoughts of the sweet land of Braj. Now he's a gopa, he's a cowherd boy, and his natural condition, or we'll say ras, is in Vrindavan with Krishna as a cowherd boy. So this is one thing, you're meditating on the Lord and seeing the Lord in the trance, or even seeing him manifesting in different ways, but that's only one thing. That's kind of what we would call shantaras. Kind of an awe, veneration, but the spiritual emotion of loving exchanges, like a cowherd boy who goes with Krishna on a jaunt out into the woods with the cows and playing, killing demons and so forth, that's not there. So he's still feeling his, what he's actually missing is Braj, Vrindavan. So sometimes my chanting and my visualization of the Lord's various forms would be disrupted when I fell into a state resembling deep sleep. Sometimes my absorption became so deep, it reminded me of deep sleep. So I would lose that vision. I would lament over this and again consider going to Nilachala. The residents of that TapoLoka would console me and ask what I was going through. Hearing my descriptions so full of anguish, the sages would praise that state, but I could not understand their praise. That longing for the Lord is also praiseworthy, because I thought that I was going through something very troublesome. By the power of yoga, I would see the Lord of the universe all around me. I saw him within and without in various forms, as if he were present everywhere. Sometimes when Sanaka and his brothers were absorbed in their meditations, they would assume those forms of the Lord. Seeing this, I would relish extreme pleasure. Even when bereft of such encounters, I remained conscious of the Lord's personal forms, and so had no reason to lament. In this way, I remained there for some time. for the most part, being happy. But once, four-headed Brahma came to TapoLoka riding on his swan. He was on his way to Pushkardweep to grace his devotees there with a visit. So we'll stop at this point, because now he's going to learn. He's learning, so Gyan also means learning. He's also learning about the structure of the universe, and now he's up on TapoLoka. And now he's learned there's another realm above him where this four-headed Brahma is coming from, Brahmaloka. So naturally, he has an inclination. Let me go there. When these sages are worshiping him, then he must be something greater than they are. So let me go see what is there. So naturally, his inclination awakens. Let me go to Brahmaloka. So we'll hear more next time we read. Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Shri Radhe Shri.